Hey, what's happening, friends? We have been talking about the National Association of Realtors commission settlement and how it affects the business, how it affects buyers and sellers. And so today I wanted to address some very big misconceptions that we're seeing in the media. And they range from all kinds of different points of view. You are seeing stuff in the media about how now you are no longer gonna have to pay real estate commissions, to sellers don't have to pay the buyer real estate commission anymore, to it'll be illegal for sellers to pay buyers agents any type of commission, that only buyers will be able to pay for their own representation. There's all kinds of different misconceptions out there about what this settlement actually says. And so I'm gonna clarify that because it's really actually very, very simple. And this whole entire settlement really does only two practical things that's gonna change the way the real estate business works and the way buyers and sellers interact with their real estate agent. So the first one is that any buyer, before they go and see a home, is going to have to sign a buyer representation contract or a buyer broker agreement, depending on what state you're in, that is going to clearly lay out the terms of their agreement with their agent to represent them in a sale. Part of it is like a normal listing contract, any special terms in that agreement. And of course, the most important part of that is the compensation, is how much will that broker, that real estate brokerage, get compensated at the end of a transaction. It does not necessarily say that the buyer will have to come out of pocket. That may be part of the case when the transaction plays out, but it is dependent on how the transaction plays out on where that money comes from. So that's the first one. Very simply, the buyer must pay, or they must sign an agreement with a real estate agent before they can see a home. So you can't go shopping around with a real estate agent anymore come August, September of this year before signing an agreement. And then the second thing it does, and this is where most of the misconceptions come from, is that you will no longer be able to pay as a seller a buyer's commission, or commissions are going to be illegal, or all this crazy stuff. This is all stemming from the settlement agreement that we will no longer, as real estate brokerages, be able to advertise a pre-negotiated buyer's commission in the MLS, period. And let me emphasize this. We will no longer be able to advertise what the commission is going to be for the buyer's agent. That's it. It says nothing about not being able to offer one, not being able to pay one. That all will continue to exist. Sellers will still be able to offer an incentive to buyers agents in their market to bring buyers to see their property. We're just not going to be able to put it in MLS. So there's going to be other ways around that. We're going to have to call each other and ask if there's any compensation. There is talk about potentially putting it on our private websites and not on the public MLS websites. That's yet to be seen how that all plays out. But very, very important to understand. Commissions are not becoming illegal. Sellers are not being banned from paying buyer agent commissions. None of that is actually happening. What's actually going to happen is now we're going to have to, instead of commissions being automatic as part of a listing in the MLS, we are going to have to negotiate that at the point of sale and have a discussion. And it's also important to understand, sellers were never ever required to pay buyer's agent commissions or a seller's agent commission. Sellers have it's always been negotiable. They've always had the opportunity to sell their house for sale by owner. They've always been able to find an unrepresented buyer. That's always been the case, and about 10% of transactions happen like that every year. Just the vast majority of the public see the value in having professionals involved in the transfer of real estate, and so they choose to pay a representative. And the way they've done it for many, many years is going to have to change due to these lawsuits and to these settlements. But just understand, going forward, most likely, my prediction is the way the business works will be very similar to the way it works today. From an outcome standpoint on how compensation is paid, in most cases, sellers will see the value in offering compensation. And I'll talk more about what that looks like in a future video. But it's not illegal, it's not banned. As a buyer, you're not gonna have to write a huge check at the end 100% of the time. That may end up being the case in a very small number of cases, but we're still gonna be able to negotiate where the commissions come from, how representation is paid for, and for a buyer and a seller, the outcomes are probably going to feel very, very similar to the way they feel today. It's just in the back end and how we do the paperwork and how we negotiate it will change. So if you have any questions about that, you can always reach out, Dylan@buybigisland.com, or put them in the comments below, or there's always a link to book a meeting down below if you want to have a more in-depth conversation. But thanks for watching. More on this coming up. This is just one of several videos about this topic, and I'll see you guys next week. Aloha.